So as I just mentioned in the last video, what we're going to do is we're going to take our idea of our empirical rule and expand on it. Right? So what we want to be able to do is we want to be able to find probabilities under a curve, even if we don't have something that's a nice standard deviation, such as 1, 2, 3, -1, -2, -3. So what we're going to do in kind of this next big portion of the section, we're going to go through a lot of problems. It's a pretty lengthy section, but what we're going to focus on to start with is finding normal probabilities. So when we're finding normal probabilities, we're going to have 3 steps. Our first step is going to be to sketch the normal curve. So we're going to draw ourselves a nice bell-shaped curve. They don't have to be pretty or fancy pictures. We just want kind of a sketch of our normal curve. Then we want to go through and we want to label it using our standard deviations. So that is something that's going to tie into our empirical rule that we looked at. Then once we do that, we're going to shade in our region of interest. So whatever area we're looking for, we're going to shade that in. Once we finish our sketch, we're going to find our z-score for the needed numbers. And then we are going to go through and we have 3 different possibilities. We could look for a probability that is less than a value. We're going to use a table. We're going to look up a value, and that's going to be our probability. We could be looking for a probability that is between 2 values. So we're going to have to look up a couple of things in a table and subtract them. Or we're going to be looking for a probability that is greater than a value. Again, we're going to have a value that we're going to look up in our table, and then we're going to do a subtraction. We're going to find the complement of that to find our greater than. So this is kind of just a summary of our process. And then we'll kind of go into a little bit more detail in our steps, and then we'll go through some examples. All right, so step 1, when we're sketching our normal curve, again, it doesn't have to be a fancy picture, but we do want some details on it. So the first thing we're going to do is draw that bell-shaped normal curve. Then we're going to label our mean and standard deviations, and then we're going to shade and label the region of interest. So that's going to be our first step. Step 2 is going to be to find the z-score. When we are finding our z-score, we always want to pay careful attention to the fact that we are putting our mean and our observed value in the correct order. Right? We want to make sure that we are getting these in our correct order because we want to make sure that we have correct values, whether they are positive or negative. Right? Then step 3 is going to be something that is going to be brand new to us, and we're going to be using a table to go through and work through these problems. So that's kind of the step that I want to focus on and talk the most about. There is a link, or there will be a link to this table posted in D2L. There will be also, as we start to go through the StatCrunch problems, some detailed instructions for those, and then we will also definitely be taking some time in class to go through and talk about these types of problems. So when we're looking at step 3, and we're actually looking at finding our normal probabilities, right, what we're doing is we're looking at a normal model that has a mean of 0 and a standard deviation of 1, because this relates to our z-scores. Right? So this is something that we refer to as our standard normal model. The standard normal model allows us to find probabilities for any normal model. So by changing our units to z-scores, we can use this one table to answer all of our different problems, no matter what type of scenario we started with. There is a table in the back of our textbook in your appendix if you were to look up the e-text. Again, I will have a link to a PDF version of this table for you that you can also, if it's easier for you to print off. This is something that if we were face-to-face in class, I would definitely be printing this off and giving this to you. So it's something that you're probably going to want to have handy. Or just have it bookmarked or saved or something along those lines as you start going through your homework. Right. Down at the bottom, what we see here is a small portion of our table. So the numbers along the left margin, when joined with the numbers across the top, represent z-scores. So if we look in this table, right, what we see here is we see this 0.8413 circled. Notice that it's in the row of 1.0 and in the column of 0.00. What this means is this value corresponds to a z-score of 1.00. This next value here is the area that corresponds to a z-score of 1.01. The next one would be 1.02, then 1.03, so on and so forth. Right? We go up here, well, this is 0.20, 0.21, 0.22. So as we're using this table, what we're going to see is it's a two-page table. We're going to have positive z-scores on one side. We're going to have negative z-scores on the other side. And then we're going to use our headings, right, both along here and then along the top to determine where we're looking in our table based on our z-score. Again, we want to pay careful attention to your signs, right? Make sure if you have a negative z-score, you're using the negative side of your table. If you're using a positive z-score, we have a positive side of our table, right? And as we go through the next few problems, I'll definitely be talking a little bit more about this, showing you more on this table, and then again, it'll be a kind of up to you to either print it or bookmark it or something along those lines so that way you have the table easily accessible as you're going through your homework.